Hello friends and neighbors, well, the fans have spoken, the subscribers have spoken, and most importantly, my sister and my girlfriend have spoken, and so I now have a name. That's right, the theater reviewing persona name is going to be... Excuse me. Yes? Don't say the name! What is the problem, Hatter? Are you going to be interrupting all of my reviews like this? Dude, you cannot say the name that they gave you. That name is cursed. What? Oh, come on. You're not telling me you really believe in that superstitious stuff, do you? You can laugh all you want, but this has nothing to do with superstition. This is just common sense, and that name has a curse on it. I could tell you stories about
okay.
I'll tell them. Well, apparently the name that you've picked for me is bad luck, and so I am simply going to be known as the Scottish Reviewer. I guess it means I get to talk in a Scottish accent. Hello? No. I guess not. Well, last week I did my list of the top 10 most underrated musicals of all time, and so this week, it seems only fair that I should do my top 10 most overrated musicals of all time. Now before I get started with this list, let me make something very clear. Overrated does not mean that I don't like it. In fact, the first 5 musicals I'm going to list, numbers 10 through 6, are musicals that are pretty good and I actually kind of like. However, I do feel like these musicals are overdone to the point where there's really no creative or original way to do them anymore. People are just kind of rehashing the old ways and the productions start to look a lot alike. So don't misunderstand, I don't necessarily think that these musicals are bad. I just think that they're overdone. Except, of course, for numbers 5 through 1. Those musicals I hate. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10. West Side Story. This is actually one of my all-time favorite musicals. The music is great, the story is compelling, and it has a lot of passion and energy. That said, though, much like the Shakespeare play that this story is based on, it is overdone and often not done very well. And unfortunately, most directors just take their cue from the movie or from the numerous stage productions that have been done over the years. Now, it was recently done again with the Puerto Rican character speaking in Spanish, but this really didn't feel altogether necessary. Again, I love the musical, but I kind of feel like it's reached its peak and doesn't really have anywhere else to go. Number 9. Oklahoma. This musical was groundbreaking in its time for musical theater, and it's still a pretty good show. The characters are fun, the story is interesting, and the music is so catchy you won't be able to get it out of your head for weeks. And it's just a fun musical to do. Once. But really, once you've seen the show once, you don't need to see it anymore because every director does it the same. This is basically a fallback musical. It's a show that theaters will do when they want to draw in a big audience. It's an enjoyable, feel-good musical, but it really doesn't need to be done more than once or twice. Number 8. Annie. Another classic musical about a little orphan named Annie who gets adopted by a billionaire named Oliver Warbucks. We all know the story because we've all seen the story either on stage or in either one of the 2 movie productions. And I do give it credit for the fact that it's a good musical for kids to introduce them to good quality shows. As long as you don't do the junior version. Don't do the junior version. That said though, again, it's just overdone. Everyone's copying the movies now. In fact, in the recent Disney remake, we saw Victor Garber proposing to the Audrey McDonald character at the end, even though that never happened in the original movie or in the original stage production. And since then, every single musical production of Annie that I have seen has had that proposal, even though, in the context of the story, it makes no sense. It comes out of nowhere. Because they saved Oliver Warbucks' Pursuing of Grace for the sequel to Annie. Yes, you heard right. There is a sequel to Annie called Annie Warbucks. And if you have an opportunity to see it, don't. At any rate, Annie's a good musical. It's a good musical for kids, but there are a lot of good musicals for kids. Number 7. The Phantom of the Opera. Yes, if you know me, you know that you're going to see a lot of Andrew Lloyd Webber on this list. And this is the first and probably his strongest musical. It tells a good dramatic story with a sympathetic character and some decent music. For all that, though, it's still Webber. It's still bland, boring Webber. And let's face it, this musical was basically just written so that he could have a falling chandelier. That's it. And the fact that the story is compelling is tribute more to the original story that the musical is based on, rather than any original writing on Weber's part. Is it a decent musical? Yes. Is it worth the insanely lengthy run that it got on Broadway? Not really. Number 6. The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, you probably saw this one coming. But let me be clear here. While I don't care for the book, I actually do really like the movie. This, however, is not the movie. It's the stage musical that's based on the movie. It has name recognition to be sure, and it has all the familiar songs and characters, but there are a few things that set it apart, and not in a good way. First of all, there was a song called Jitterbug that was originally going to be in the movie, but eventually got cut. Basically, the Wicked Witch sends this insect after our 4 heroes called the Jitterbug, which is supposed to make them dance until they're so exhausted that they can't fight off the winged monkeys. It's about as stupid as it sounds. It's basically just an excuse to have a high-energy dance number, and don't get me wrong, it's a good song and a really fun dance number, but there's no point. It adds nothing to the plot or the characters, and it actually kind of takes away from the spooky atmosphere that was created by the Wicked Witch's domain. It was cut from the movie for a reason, but the stage musical kept it in. Also, for some reason, there's a lot of pun-based humor in the stage musical that wasn't in the original movie. It's like they were watching the movie and said, you know what this classic story that everybody knows and loves needs? Puns. Anyway, again, it's not awful, but it's a pretty weak musical, and you're probably better off just staying at home and watching the original movie on DVD. So like I said, those first 5 are not musicals that I hate and not musicals that I think are bad, I just think that they're overdone. But these next 5 are musicals that I despise. Beginning with number 5. Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. I've talked about this one a little bit before, and a lot of people have wondered why I hate this musical so much, since so many of them have fond memories of doing it or watching it. What's wrong with this show? Well, it's not the musical, which is typical Rodgers and Hammerstein. It's catchy and fun and enjoyable to listen to. It's not the humor, which is actually pretty funny and allows for a lot of different kinds of jokes. No, it's the characters, and it's not even all the characters. The Step Family, for example, is a lot of fun. If you get the right 3 actors playing those parts, it can be absolutely hilarious. And it's not the King and Queen, who actually have some really nice moments in the musical. No, it's the 2 main characters, the Prince and Cinderella. I cannot stand how schmaltzy he is and how insanely passive and submissive she is. They're just completely uninteresting characters, and every scene they have together is awkward as hell. The Disney remake did at least attempt to give them some character, but in general, they're just bland stereotypes. And they take up so much of the story that I don't think it's right that this musical is done over and over and over again. Number 4. Jesus Christ Superstar. I loathe this musical. I absolutely loathe it. Aside from the music being typical Weber blandness, they take the story of the last week of Jesus' life and turn it into an angst-driven whine fest. And just to be clear, I don't think that their perception of Jesus is blasphemous or anything. It's just a really crummy characterization and a really crummy story. It's basically what it would be like if the gospel was written like a teenage soap opera. Neither of the 2 main characters are likable. Jesus is a whiny emo child, and Judas is just an obnoxious punk. And I don't have a problem with the perception of Jesus as an ordinary human being or as Judas as a sympathetic character. But you can at least make Jesus a likable ordinary human being and Judas into a likable sympathetic character. But for whatever reason, people still eat this musical up. So there you go. Number 3. Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. The thing about this musical is that when you see it for the very first time, your first thought is, damn, that was amazing! Because it's a very flashy and generally entertaining and high-energy show. But once you see it a few more times and actually start to pick it apart, you start to realize that this is absolute crap. It started out as a 15-minute cantata and has since been padded out to the 70-minute musical that it is now, and boy does it show! For some reason, Weber decided to use a variety of musical styles, everything from a hoedown to an Elvis Presley rock and roll number. Why? Oh, no reason. Just 'cause. Or if there is a reason, it's pun-based, like Pharaoh being the king, so he becomes Elvis, or Go-Go Joseph being a go-go dance number. Ha 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 ha. Kill me. And the music is that horrible combination of catchy and bland that you cannot get out of your head no matter how hard you try. It's crap. Plain and simple. The only saving grace that this musical has is that it's only 70 minutes long. Number 2. Grease. This musical is just obnoxious. The music is obnoxious, the characters are obnoxious, the story, what little there is obnoxious, and the message is obnoxious. If the guy you like doesn't like you for who you are, completely change for him! That's right, ladies, completely change yourself and eliminate any sense of self or self-worth you might have had, and then the guy you have a crush on will go for you. God help me, I don't even want to talk about this one anymore, so let's just move on to the number one. The number one most overrated musical of all time. Cats. And I certainly hope this doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. I do not even have words for how stupid this musical is. It's 2 hours of people dressed in skin-tight, fur-lined outfits and dancing around like cats. There's no plot, no interesting characters, few memorable songs, and no point! Which would be okay, I guess, but it tries so hard to be something really deep and profound, and it's not! It's based on a series of T.S. Eliot poems that probably weren't meant to form a coherent story or have any kind of underlying message about the absolute truth of human existence. And yet this thing was on Broadway for 18 years! Why? My theory is that people became convinced that there was some sort of hidden meaning in all this garbage, and so they kept coming back so that they could try to figure out what the hell this musical was trying to say. Let me know if you ever figure it out, folks, because I'm at an absolute loss. And those are my top 10 most overrated musicals of all time. Thanks for joining me, thanks for naming me, and until next time, this is the Scottish Reviewer reminding you that slotted spoons may not hold much soup, but they can catch a potato.